Hello everyone, and welcome to my Days of Our Lives Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The engagement celebration for Stefan and Gabi ends dramatically. While alone together at the DiMera estate, Nicole and Eric locked eyes. Eric stumbled before going to the kitchen and said, "I should go get that food for you." Nicole tried to make light of the situation once it was safe to do so. Soon after his return, Eric brought sandwiches and tea, which Nicole appreciated. Nicole complained, if only the baby's father was so concerned. Eric delicately responded, "I'm sure he has his reasons." "Well, they're not going to be sufficient. He's already abandoned us, even though the kid hasn't even been born. It's as if he's forgotten what's important," Nicole retorted. Nicole quickly freed Eric of his babysitting duties, but as they hugged farewell, a passionate kiss ensued. Eric pulled away from Nicole. "We can't do this. I'm with Sloan, you're with EJ." Nicole apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, but I just felt that old pull between us, and that old feeling of being left behind and worthless. It's okay, and you shouldn't feel either, and EJ's a jackass for doing this to you. And if that baby were mine, I'm sorry. That's not helpful," said Eric. "If things between you and Sloan work out, you still have the potential to be the ideal father," Nicole murmured. When Leo joined them in the wine cellar, EJ, Kristen, and they all let out a collective sigh of relief. "I never expected to say it, but I'm glad you're here," EJ announced. "I'm not trying to be rude, but what's going on?" Leo answered. "Playing cops and robbers, you know, may get a little out of hand," said Kristen in jest. "Seriously." Leo stumbled. "You moron, of course not. Our sister Megan did this." Kristen made it clear. "She has imprisoned us down here for weeks," EJ clarified. Leo boasted that Kristen and EJ's admission of Megan's existence wasn't entirely unexpected. Leo continued, before remarking that it was unusual for siblings to engage in such practices together. And EJ and Kristen each groaned in response. "I knew she was up to something, so I followed her here. Lead whistleblower can always sniff out a good story. And you'd be surprised how. More often than not, my nose leads me to uncovering an underground bondage dungeon just like yours," he said. Leo wanted to know what had triggered Megan, but neither EJ nor Kristen could recall that particular detail of the incident. "Come on. It's not like the combination to your locker, is it?" Leo objected. "Megan injected us with something to make us forget," Kristen said. "Does this relate to her son in any way?" Leo questioned. "Actually, that does remind me of something," Kristen gave a reply. EJ complained. "I feel like it's more high stakes, like it's life or death." "You two are useless, God." Leo cried foul. "I advise you to release us immediately if you don't want to totally commit to your nom de plume, lady," Kristen exploded. When EJ and Kristen emerged from the covert tunnels and took turns recounting everything they could still remember about what had occurred to them, Nicole was still screaming to Eric about previous disappointments. After the narrative, Eric groaned again as he left the mansion and considered what had occurred to Nicole earlier. Nicole followed EJ with a sigh as he hurried off to take a shower, wondering about what had transpired with Eric earlier. After taking a shower, EJ reunited with Nicole and questioned what had brought Eric to the estate. Nicole answered, "A very good reason. And we will talk about that, but not right now," before diverting the conversation by informing EJ about the earlier pregnancy scare and reassuring him that everything was great. Nicole's excellent news made EJ joyful, but he quickly brought the talk back to its initial subject. EJ speculated, "You assumed the worst of me, that I didn't care about you or our child," and you turned to Eric. "You already know how I feel about you, EJ, so that's not how it went," Nicole remonstrated. "Do I?" Nicole rebutted EJ, who won the argument. Nicole said, "When I think about how Megan could have killed you, I realize that I do. I love you." But it didn't make EJ feel better. EJ worried. "I just feel like I might have talked you into saying that, or pressured you. but Nicole laughed it off and promised a night of events that would demonstrate the assertion. As Leo snuck out of the covered tunnels with a pricey bottle of wine, once the situation was safe to leave, Kristen called the police from the living room and attempted to report Megan's recent crimes before rushing off in search of EJ's assistance. Harris waved a revolver around and said he was sorry for interrupting the engagement
let out
party.
a theatrical
gasp as Harris said, "I'm here to eliminate a threat. He's coming to kill me, so I'm the threat." Megan worried as she turned away from Harris and faced a terrified captive audience that had no right to criticize the performance at that precise time. Harris explained, groggily, that Stefan was the chosen victim. "You have no idea who I am." Stefan rebuked him. Harris replied, "I'm just following orders. It's nothing personal." Wendy attempted to utilize the distraction to call the police as Stefan and Gabi argued over whether EJ was to blame. However, Harris noticed what was occurring and shot the gun at a bottle of champagne to illustrate the potential repercussions of such an action. After everyone had recovered from the shock of the gunfire, Harris told Stefan, "The man who wants you dead is Lee Shin," and Megan sighed in response to the statement, pleased with Rolf's work. Wendy objected, "I know my brother, and he would never." "Lee has a history of trying to eliminate his competition by any means necessary," Gabi retorted. Johnny reminded Wendy, "and he insisted you not come to this party." Harris' days as an assassin were supposed to be behind him, Chad noted. Chad speculated, "You've been brainwashed again, this time by Lee. Lee indoctrinated Stefan previously. He has done this before." Gabi concurred. "One can ask, who in this town hasn't been brainwashed?" To Gwen in a whisper, Dimitri. Dimitri was intrigued by Gwen's response. "It's kind of a thing here. And just wait until somebody pulls off a Mission Impossible-style mask." Harris was the target of several attempts by Chad, Stephanie, and eventually Gabi. Gabi argued, "You're not a murderer." "Actually," Gwen said, "technically he is." Not assisting, Gabi exploded. Soon after, Rafe came and attempted to take control of the situation. However, Gabi got in the way of his fruitless attempt to force Harris to the ground, and the gun fired as they struggled. Just as Dimitri learned that Megan had been hit by the bullet instead of Stefan, Gabi leaped off Harris' back in a desperate attempt to check on Stefan. Megan passed out while collapsing in Dimitri's arms, and Gabi took advantage of the commotion to kick Harris in the crotch and grab the gun. Gwen then dialed 911 while Chad relayed the incident to Rafe. Rafe had no trouble accepting Lee's involvement. Rafe said, "I noticed Lee outside. He was staring up here, and I assumed he was going to come up here and cause mayhem and make a fool of himself. But obviously, it was much worse." After securing Harris in a chair with handcuffs, Rafe requested Chad and Stephanie to monitor the situation until help could arrive. "I have a task to finish." Harris was anxious. "You failed," said Chad. "Poor guy can't get a break," thought Stephanie. Wendy was comforted by Johnny. "I almost did something really shady to try and get Channel back after I lost her to my sister," Johnny admitted. "Did you coerce a Navy SEAL into murdering Allie?" Wendy retorted, prompting a head shake from Johnny. "Of course not," Wendy responded. "Because you're not a criminal, a heartless monster with no conscience. There is absolutely no defense for the horrific, unforgivable act my brother committed," Wendy said. While waiting for word that Stefan had passed away, Lee paced around the Shin apartment, daydreaming that Gabi would drop by later that evening and declare the tragedy to have been a blessing in disguise that had made it possible for the proper couple to reunite. The visit proceeded exactly as it had in Lee's fantasy, until Stefan entered the frame to reveal that the assassination attempt had failed, and Rafe followed to detain the presumed mastermind. Gabi soon arrived, and everything went as it had in Lee's fantasy.